Introducing our View from the Top moderator and Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. I'm Nick Johnston, the publisher of Axios. This is our very first event in Pittsburgh ever. So this is super exciting to us. It's super exciting. So hopefully some of our readers out in person. As some of you may know, we have, through Axios, local newsletters in 30 cities across the United States. We are in Philadelphia, but not yet here in Pittsburgh. So I want to give you a sneak peek here is that at the top of our list for possible expansions, this is 100% true, is Axios Pittsburgh. So I hope this is being my first trip to Pittsburgh. It will 100% not be my last. And if any of you are helping take this dream become a reality for us for the launch of Axios Pittsburgh, hit me up on email, nick@axios.com. I'm an inbox zero person. We hope to do a lot more here in this community. And of course, everything we do at Axios wouldn't be possible without the support of our partners. All the launches we do, all the investments we make in journalism. So we're hugely grateful to them and hugely grateful for Shell for making this morning's conversation possible. So I'm very excited to welcome back to the Axios stage for a View from the Top conversation, Shell's Senior Vice President of U.S. Chemicals and Products, Emma Lewis. Emma, welcome back to Axios. Great to see you.
Nice to see you.
So let's start here in the community. You're relatively new to your role here at Shell, and that includes the polymers division here just outside of Pittsburgh. Give us your vision on how that fits into what Shell is doing and what your priorities are for that.
Yeah, so I'd say relatively new back to this, right? So I actually was on this project. I was the third employee on the Shell Polymers Monaca project. So I left my former employer specifically to come and do this. And there was a couple of reasons for that.
Yeah.
So you may figure out it's not a Pittsburgh, Texas, Louisiana accent, right? But I grew up in the northeast of England. I grew up in Yorkshire. And that is an area that, although it's 5,000 miles away from here, has a very similar story. So we used to have a lot of textile mills. We used to have a lot of steel mills. We used to have all kinds of industry, and it really all went away in the 1980s. And unemployment rates were really, really high. Right. And I have 4 brothers, and none of us actually live at home because there were no jobs. So I kind of left because of that. The area I come from, very similar story, right? It's reinvented itself as kind of a medical and technology center. So it's always been interesting for me to come to Pittsburgh, and shame on you that it's your first trip. Because it feels like it's a little bit like coming home. So coming back to this project, I went and did a couple of different jobs in Shell. It's been like coming home again for me. So I have several plants. I've got 1 in Texas, I've got 3 in Louisiana, and I have this one. And I always say, like, don't tell the others, but this is
we love all our children equally.
I love all my children the same, but this is the one where my heart is. So I would say it's very personal to me, this project. Yeah. I have a lot of emotional attachment to it. The community around the asset is very similar to the community I grew up in. I was the first person in my family to go to university. I come from a blue-collar family. So it's really, personal to me. And this plant is so important to Shell. So it's 50% of all of the capital deployed in the chemicals and products division globally sits in this plant. And so where this plant goes, so does the future of sort of refining and chemicals in Shell. So hugely important to us. And I'm super, super happy to be back.
Well, so let's talk about those investments in this plant. We're in the midst of these cities transforming as part of like a global energy transformation, this move to decarbonization. Tell us how these kinds of plants and what Shell's strategy is as part of that massive change.
Yeah, so maybe to just put it in the context of, like, we like to talk about the energy transition, right? And I wish it was as simple as us just flipping a switch and everything being zero carbon and green, but the reality is that's not the case. Customers need products, they need energy security, and it needs to be affordable. So I think for a company like Shell, what we're trying to figure out is how do we keep supplying the products and things that customers need. That could be fuels, it could be polymers, it could be detergents. But how do we start to do it in a way that produces less carbon? The harsh reality right now is, and they alluded to it in the previous conversation, is a lot of the technologies to decarbonize are incredibly expensive.
Yeah.
And so they don't always make financial sense to deploy. So it's like, how do you balance these two things? So what you see us doing in some of our assets is, we're electrifying things because that removes carbon. We obviously have a CCS business. Talked a lot about hydrogen in the last conversation. We have a hydrogen business. And it's and. And I think sometimes the energy transition conversation, it becomes either or. Is it blue or is it green or is it gray or is it pink? And the reality, yes, it's all of it. The world needs all of those things to be able to sustain.
Well, it's that metaphor you use of a switch. You don't flip it. It's a knob you're turning very slowly. That's going to take years and years and years. What I hope personally is it's one of those kind of hockey stick deals, right, where the knob goes a little bit slow at the start, and then we really start to see the acceleration. But I think, for me, those things are really important, and it's something I spend a lot of time working on is how do we balance those things? Talking to customers a lot about how do we make things affordable? I think out of the gate, everybody was very excited about bio and green. Yeah.
Then we saw the cost to produce products like detergents using, I'd say, circular or bio-based feedstocks. They're really high. So then blue becomes an option, CCS, hydrogen, because the cost of that is lower. So I think the transition is also not just going to be sort of dirty to clean. It's going to be through different phases and different types. Cleaner, yeah.
As part of that transition, let's get back to the community. Sort of, how does Pennsylvania, how does this region benefit, stay on the front end of that journey?
Yeah. I think that there was a lot of conversation that I won't repeat around workforce development, all those things that are very important to attract industry and that we're also really heavily involved in. So won't repeat that part of the conversation. I think one thing that's been interesting for us as we've come into the community is it's one thing to be constructing a plant, it's another thing to be operating it, right? So the construction and the operation are quite different. And how we dialogue with our community, how our community dialogues with us about the operation of our asset, I think is important. It's something we're working quite hard to improve transparency around. So I think it's sort of communities have to educate themselves. We have to educate the communities. We have to be open to dialogue. I think in the past, companies like ours have maybe had a bit of an approach of, let me sit here and tell you how you should think and feel about this asset. And it needs to be more of a two-way conversation. That's part of being here,
like having the community buy-in for that kind of transition.
It needs to be more of a two-way conversation, and I think more transparency around our operations and our plans and what things look like, and that's something that's important for us to invest some significant time in.
That's excellent. We're about to get the hook here, but one thing we love to do at Axios is in on one fun thing. We'll make that one Pittsburgh thing. As someone who is back to Pittsburgh, back home, almost as you say it, for those of us who are new, what's your favorite thing here? What is the thing we got to do? What is the thing we got to eat?
Can I have two?
You can have two.
Okay, so gotta love the sandwiches with the fries and the coleslaw, right? Like totally down with the sandwiches. Also love the Steelers. So married to a former football player, love like my own soccer team from home, Leeds. We're great some seasons, we suck other seasons. I feel a lot of that with the Steelers. Like. Actually, bizarrely, love being at the Steelers games in the middle of January and February, freezing my butt off and not being able to feel my legs. So yeah, that's probably my favorite.
All right, I think you passed the I'm from Pittsburgh test right there. Emma, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you very
Michelle
much
for making this conversation possible. Thank you all for being here, and stay tuned for hopefully more on Axios Pittsburgh.
Thank you.